Northwest African American Museum provides insight into being Black and living in the Pacific Northwest. You're not from around here, are you? Incorporates paintings, collages, and other artwork, sparking conversation and hopefully civic engagement. Please welcome the artist, Lisa Myers Bulmash. It's so good to meet you.
Thank you.
So you're not from around here, are you? Is the name of the exhibit.
Right.
And what is that meant to evoke?
It's meant to evoke those situations that we've all been in, where you walk into a room or you walk into a new situation and people turn around and look at you like, you don't quite belong. You know, like you don't have a part of that territory that belongs to you, and that even if you can show that you belong in that territory, you're still sort of on probation.
There's that barrier.
Yeah.
And nobody likes to be on the other side of that barrier.
Right,
We all
and
want to feel
everybody
like we
has
belong.
experienced it.
So the best way maybe to demonstrate what you're doing with your artwork is to let people see some. So let's talk about this particular piece. What is this and what is it meant?
Right, so this
By it.
piece was partly inspired by an old cover of the book The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. You might remember that that cover has the Little Prince on top of an asteroid floating through space. And I decided to interpret it in my own way using a picture that is actually of my brother and myself back when we were probably around 5 and 6, and we were at our grandmother's house in Kentucky. So I used our images to stand in for the Little Prince, and then I combined that with an overlay of a transferred image of the moon that I got from the Apollo 13 collection. So what I was going for there was that feeling where you're feeling like you are literally a satellite circling everything else, and you're sort of part of it, but you're not really.
But you're not in the main part of it in
Right.
that. The second piece is called The Tourist.
Right.
Called Tourist. Tell us about this one.
Right, so again, I combined a family picture. That one is actually of me when I was maybe 10 years old, and an image from the Apollo 13 missions. That shadow is actually of an astronaut taking a picture, but of course it had to be lit up because you don't have that light source that you would ordinarily have when the astronaut's on the moon. And the idea is similar. I wanted to use that title and that distancing effect to give the idea of someone who is finding themselves in a new situation or just an uncomfortable situation and being treated like somebody who is some sort of rare curiosity or exotic animal.
You've had that experience in your life.
Of course.
With that feeling.
Right.
Seattle is the place that is the whitest place I've ever lived. I just honestly have never lived any place with such a small African-American Black population. I'm wondering how that affects the way your lived experience feels to you.
One thing I noticed right away was that I started noticing that there was something that just disturbed me under the surface, and after I thought about it a while, I realized it was because, there aren't a whole lot of different looking faces, and I was used to seeing people of all different colors from all different backgrounds, so that usually sets off an alarm bell in my mind. Like, why is this particular situation so very homogeneous, so very the same across the board? And then I started asking questions like, well, there must be some African Americans around here. Well, where do they live? And a lot of people would say, oh yes, we're very proud of our diversity. And then I realized in most cases that diversity was in tiny little pockets here and there, not what I was used to with people of all different backgrounds just passing each other and interacting with each other on a daily basis.
And if you're in the majority part of that experience, you could maybe not notice that, but when you're not, you always notice it.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that. And everybody has had both experiences. Whether it's as simple as belonging to a political organization, and you walk in and everybody knows that you are part of that political organization, and then maybe a month later you go to a place where you are definitely the one person. Everybody's had the experience of being in the majority, and they've also had that experience of being in the minority. And I want people to think about that and remember that this is not something unusual.
So the conversation you would most like us to have as we leave this exhibit is what?
I would like people to remember those times where they did feel a little sort of itch in the back of their brain saying, something's not right, maybe I don't quite belong here. Because if you've had this experience, then you can relate to that in somebody who has had that experience for a different reason. There's tolerance, which is seeing somebody on your block and going, I wonder if that person's supposed to be here, but then continuing on your business. And then there's inclusion, which is seeing that person whom you've never seen on your block and thinking, oh, I must have met them at some point. I'll go over there later as soon as I unload the groceries from the car and say hi.
And that's the welcome, the inclusion.
Right.
And that's what we all want to feel. Thank you so much. I think people are really going to want to come and see
It was
this.
a pleasure.
You're Not
Thank
From
you.
Around Here, Are You? Runs through April 8th at the Northwest African American Museum. You can find out more information and relevant links on our website. And then coming up, the luxury of a walk-in shower, which sounds so good in the cold weather. Wouldn't it just go in there and get really warm? Why it's more affordable than you think. We'll check it out next.